Hello, my name is Zach Coury, and I'm with the Utah Rare Plant Program. Today I'm going to be presenting about our second annual trip to Desolation Gray Canyons. This trip happened in close collaboration with the BLM and especially Cameron Starks. We want to give thanks to him for helping that happen. On the trip we had Cam Stark, John Mortimer as our BLM River Rangers that helped everything go smoothly. From the Utah Rare Plant Program, we had Ben Gibbons, Blake Wellard, Bailey Spears, and myself, Zach Coury. In addition to that, we also had a couple friends of the program, Jim Seeley and Kendra Babbitts, and they really helped the trip run smoothly. So first I'll give an overview on where the trip took place. So Desolation Gray Canyons is a permitted 84-mile stretch of the Green River between Sandwash and Swayze's Beach. It is managed by the Price Field Office of the BLM, and the river is uncrossed by roads between Ouray and Uinta County and Green River and Emery County. To the east side of the Green River are Uinta Ute tribal lands, and to the west lies the Desolation Canyon Wilderness Study Area. The area is considered one of the most remote places in the lower 48, as well as one of the largest tracts of continuous wilderness. So on our trip, we spent 6 nights on the river between June 8th and June 14th. And just what a kind of an average day would look like. We would usually get up and go for a hike from our camp. Then we would do a bit of travel down the river, covering a few miles. And then in the afternoon, we would go on a bigger hike and try and cover a lot of ground before having to get back to camp for dinner. A lot of the hiking was really technical and required scrambling up and down steep talus fields and terraces, and that was just because a lot of these plants tend to inhabit pretty tricky places to get to. Moving on to the plants, so we went into the trip with 5 main targets in mind and ended up with 3 additional interesting finds, so for a total of 8 species of interest. And first I'm going to go over the 3 listed threatened species because those are kind of the most important ones for our trip. So first we have Carex specuicola, which is ranked G2S1. It was previously only known from seeps and alcoves on the San Juan River, which is hundreds of miles to the south in San Juan County. It occupies similar habitats in Deso and is found only in mesic or wet habitats that often are a little bit saline or calcareous. There's been discussion as to what to actually call material from Desolation Canyon, and it has been considered in the past to be things like Carex holmgreniorum and also Carex utahensis. However, recent work and input from experts in the genus have confirmed it to be Carex specuicola, and this is in part due to the presence of 2, not 3 stigmas on many of the individuals. There also is a possibility of there being another species in the canyon, so it definitely is going to take a little bit more work to figure out exactly what's going on with Carex in Desolation. So moving on, we'll take a look at Cyclodenia jonesii, which is a member of the Apocynaceae family. That's the same family as milkweed, and you can kind of tell that by the fact that they also have a follicle for a fruit, similar to milkweed. The species has previously been called Cyclodenia humilis variety jonesii, but recent years it has been determined to be its own species and not a variety. We made a ton of finds this last year and really started to kind of figure out its niche and what it likes. And it was really predictably located in a red mudstone band of the Colton Formation, and usually it was also in loose, gravelly soils. And it's worth noting that those bands of gravelly soils were usually several hundreds of feet above the elevation of the river, so that was kind of the main species that made us have to go on those tricky hikes to get up to it. We're looking forward to further testing where we can find the plant, and it would be really awesome to find some more in the southern end of the canyon, as we've not been able to find any of the populations off of the Colton Formation. We think there's a good possibility that we'll be able to find them further south in the canyon off of the Colton Formation, just because those substrates are similar in a lot of ways, so it seems like there's a lot of potential habitat to find. And without a doubt, there's going to be way more habitat once we start going deeper into drainages further off the canyon. So that's one thing we're really going to try and focus on next year, is getting deeper into the canyons. Our last threatened species is Hesperodanthus argillaceus, which is in the Brassicaceae family. We're all really excited about this one because it was not previously known from Desolation Canyon. In the past, it's only been known from a fairly small area near its type locality at Big Pack Mountain and Wild Horse Bench on the Green River Shale Formation. So it's only ever been found on this substrate, and that kind of reliance on Green River shale, or at least an apparent reliance, is a big component of why it's listed as a threatened species, since all of its habitat is overlaying oil shale. So there's been a lot of oil and gas extraction in its near vicinity. A lot of times you'll have kind of pumping projects up on top of these mesas, and then those will inevitably cause a lot of disturbance, and you'll get erosion downslope. So that is definitely a big threat to this species. So finding it in Desolation Canyon isn't necessarily a big range extension in terms of distance. It's only a few dozen miles, but it's super cool because there are now these new populations falling in the Desolation Canyon Wilderness Study Area. And those are therefore going to be much more protected than a lot of the other populations. We reviewed the geological layers from our points, and all of them are either squarely on Green River Shale or they're on the margin of the Colton Formation, which is underlying Green River Shale. These points were still kind of right on the margin, so there definitely seems to be a really strong association between the Hesperodanthus and Green River Shale. But that being said, there's a lot of spots of Colton Formation that really provide a super similar habitat to what we've seen, so we're really trying to find spots further down canyon and off of Green River Shale, because that would definitely really expand the range of the species. So moving on from these 3 threatened species, I'm going to briefly talk about the 5 other species of interest in a little bit less detail. So there are 2 endemic Aquilesias to the canyon that both share kind of similar habitats, although they're quite separated by river miles. The first one is Aquilesia atwoodii. That's the species that's a little bit further up canyon, and it likes kind of overhanging seeps and habitats like that get a little bit of moisture, not unlike where Carex specuicola grows. It has only been collected a handful of times. It was first discovered in 1999, so we're excited to have been able to collect a bit more data on that species. The next Aquilesia is Desolaticola. This one occurs much further down canyon, kind of in the Grays Canyon section. It's a yellow-flowered columbine, and it tends to like similar habitat to atwoodii with the kind of seep hanging garden type areas, but we found it to be in a little bit wetter spots with a little bit more water on the surface, at least from the one spot we were able to check it out. This year we were only able to revisit kind of a known point, but it was really good to be able to see that habitat and get a feel for the species so that we can spend a little bit more time trying to find new populations of it next year. Next on the list we have Gaillardia flava. This plant has been treated in synonymy by a lot of sources as being the same thing as Gaillardia pinnatophyta, but it's pretty apparent when you're in the canyon that that's not the case. Flava has yellow disc flowers, while pinnatophyta has red disc flowers, and they both have a little bit different vegetation, and you can see them growing right next to each other. This plant is pretty ubiquitous in the second half of the canyon, all the way down to Swayze's Beach, but it's still really good to get a little bit more data on it and understand the extent of the species. Next up, we have Elysiella latifolia variety imperialis. This plant has a pretty decent-sized range across Utah, going from the southern tier of counties all the way up to the San Rafael Swell. But that is the furthest north that's been known previously, so we were pretty excited to find this plant in a few locations going up the canyon to pretty far north. So it's kind of considered to be a Mojave species that's made its way up these river drainages, which you see a lot of plants doing. So it's really cool to extend its range in some way. We weren't able to actually see it in flower. I think we were a little premature for that, but the leaves are extremely distinctive, so we were able to get a confident ID on it from an expert in Polemoniaceae. Finally, we have Phacelia incana, which is a really tiny Phacelia. It's known kind of from the Great Basin and also the Uinta Basin, but hasn't ever been documented before in the Desolation Canyon area, even though it's kind of right in between those, so it's not too surprising. But it is an S2 rated plant, so it is cool to get more data on it and understand its extent throughout the state. But it's not surprising that it hasn't been documented before, as it's really tiny and just is in little crevices and talus piles, so we got lucky and found it in a couple spots. 2023 was an extremely productive year again in Desolation Canyon, and we're already in the process of planning another trip there for June. It's a really exciting place to work just because it has had way less botanical exploration than most parts of the state, just because of how remote it is and how much of a trip it takes to get to these places. Moving forward, we're hoping to be able to get a little bit deeper into the tributaries that run down into the main river. And getting an idea of if these species really extend a long way from the river would just unlock a lot of potential habitat and give us a much better idea of estimating total population numbers, which is really important just for management of these species. So just wrapping up, just wanted to give thanks again to Cam Stark, who really facilitated this trip and has made it happen for the last 2 years, and hopefully is going to be a huge help again this year and into the future. Thank you for bearing with me through this presentation. It's been pretty tricky recording it in advance, but it has been a good opportunity to show a lot of these videos and photos that I took from the trip. So hopefully you've been able to enjoy some of that. And yeah, thank you.